What is up, awesome dads? Welcome to Act Dad, the Awesome Dad podcast. I am stoked. Today I have a great guest. You're going to get a ton of value. Get ready. The guest today has over 10 years experience in pediatrics. He graduated from medical school back in 2006. He's a third generation pediatric doctor. So a lot of family experience there. You could say it runs in the blood. And also an awesome dad, father of three, great husband, just all around great dude. It is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Alan Cadiz to the show.
All right, man. Thanks for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited.
Yeah, doctor, I'm stoked. I'm excited. I'm ready to rock. And I think you're going to be able to give both myself and the audience of dads a ton of information. So really excited about this interview.
All right, Mark.
So let me start here.
Yeah, go ahead.
How did you get into pediatrics? What made you decide that's the route you wanted to take?
So again, being a third generation pediatrician, I kind of, idolized my father growing up, and he's a pediatrician. And pediatrics was a little different back then. He was gone a lot of the time, and I appreciated the hard work, but he loved it, and he really would come home happy every day and telling me all about his patients. And then you go out in the city following him around to run errands, and everybody comes up and hugs him and loves him. And I kind of wanted a part of that. To me there was no choice. So as I went into college, I knew I wanted to be a pediatrician. I also wanted to have a little business background, so I took a marketing major, but kept doing the medical background. And then when I finished college, I knew it was for me and I wanted to do it. So went off to medical school. So I actually did my medical school down here at Nova Southeastern University in South Florida, and then went on to do my residency at University of Florida in Jacksonville, my pediatric residency. And I did an extra year of residency as a chief resident, overseeing the program there. And then I came back down to South Florida to start my practice with, join a large group practice, and been here since.
Awesome. And I think one of the things that I really love about your pediatric style is you're very like down to earth, very real, right? I think that most people, when they expect a doctor to walk in, they expect him to be bald and gray haired and whatnot, but you're just like you're a dad, you're a normal dude. Right.
Oh, exactly. I mean, my number one job is being a dad, and what I took away from my dad growing up was, pediatrics was different back then. He had a lot more. There was no break for him. There was no, he had to go to the hospital. He had to, when one of his patients went to the hospital, he had to go there. When he had a patient in the ER, he had to go see him in the ER. When he had a newborn baby, he had to go see the newborn baby. So I think, luckily for me, pediatrics has changed, and we have a little bit more free time. Where we have other hospitalists covering us, and the little bit less hours. So I wanted that. And when I knew going into pediatrics, I didn't want to be like my dad. I wanted to be there for my kids, and I take that as my number one job. I'm involved in my kids' sports, and I like coaching. So I do a lot of coaching with my kids. I've actually coached every team they played for. So so I get to know all the kids throughout the community, and so I take that as my number one job, being a dad.
That's awesome, dude. I empathize 110%. That's actually the second core principle of Act a Dad, is that you got to spend that quality time with your kids, because you're going to wake up one day and be like, you're going to blink. You're going to be like, man, I missed it. I missed all those years. And I just got through a stint of coaching. What age did you start coaching your kids?
So I started with about 3 with one of the local programs. A lot more challenges there. And most of the kids aren't interested in it. So it's more keeping them on the field, right? And stop them from catching the butterflies and the lizards. Yep. But now my oldest son is 9. I have 3 kids. I have a 9-year-old, a girl. He's about to turn 9 this month. Excuse me. He's 8 now. And I have a 6-year-old daughter who's about to turn 7 next month. And then I have a son who just turned 5. So I've coached my 9-year-old through every season since 3. And we're talking football, basketball, and soccer. So
that's awesome.
You're probably like, really, now it becomes a pride for me, because I've always been a competitive dad. A competitive person. I grew up playing sports my whole life, and you know, I'm winning some championship rings. So I've been, and I'll wear them too, by the way. So it's a kind of joke my friends have with me when I go out. I wear my championship rings for my kids' little league sports, but it's a lot of fun for me, and it takes away from, the everyday stress of working in a practice and and worrying about patients. It gives me something to do, and it's just the way I was brought up. So really, I would encourage all dads out there to get involved in the sports if their kids are interested in it. But any way you can get involved in their activity by either coaching or even assistant coaching. So a couple of the seasons I've done just assistant coaches where I knew I would have to leave work early to be a head coach. But yeah, I'd highly recommend that.
Yeah, I know when I started coaching my daughter's 3-year-old soccer team, I was like, I want to be the only coach. I want to be the man. I want to lay down the rules. And I found out within 2 minutes that you want other people there to help out because
Exactly,
it's just
especially
madness.
especially with the younger ones, right?
Oh yeah, they're like you said, you got one chasing butterflies, the other one's rolling in the net. They're just out of control. So I got a question for you. Like, inevitably, someone ends up getting hurt on the field. So what happens when someone gets hurt? You're like, step back, everyone. I'm the doctor. I got this. Or you just kind of like how does that look?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It depends sometimes. As the older ones, when I say older ones, I mean the 8 and 9-year-olds. They get pretty competitive, especially in soccer. You have a lot of injuries, and in football. If it's a kid on my team that I'm coaching, I'll be one of the first ones out there to check it out. But I kind of take off the doctor hat when I'm coaching. So when there's a player from another team, I will kind of step back, wait for their coach. If it looks like something serious, then I would jump in. And fortunately, I haven't had that yet. But unfortunately, this legal age, I try not to get involved unless it's someone I really know. But obviously, if it's something bad, I would gladly jump out there to help out.
Right. I feel like it would be hard to just take that hat off, that doctor hat off, right? Because you're wearing it every day, you're thinking about it, you're studying it, you're talking about it. But I think that's important too to have
it is.
like
I
a way
really
of
like.
just
I think that's one
escaping.
of my coping mechanisms is when one of my de-stressing mechanisms is I will, when I'm out and about, I try to think of myself as Alan, the dad, the coach, and not always having that doctor hat on. But it's hard, and it's what I do, and it's what I love best. So it always comes out.
Absolutely. So speaking of wearing the hats and taking the hats off, like how do you feel that being a pediatrician has impacted the way that you parent? Do you feel like you're more worried about because you know all these different things that could go wrong? Or do you feel like you're less worried because you understand that, okay, there's solutions and we're going to figure it out and so on and so forth?
I think I'm less worried. I don't think every doctor's the same. I know pediatricians who will even get more stressed out than a lot of patients. That when their kid's sick, they bring them in right away and want everything checked right away. I'm kind of the opposite. Again, I've had my dad, and my wife's actually a pediatric nurse practitioner. So when my kids get sick, we don't really do much but monitor them, and we don't get stressed out about it. I think there are times when they're sick for a few more days than usual, and we start thinking of some of the weird diseases that we've learned in the past. But
Yeah.
we kind of, between the three of us, we kind of knock questions around. Hey, do you think we should get him checked now? Do you think we should bring him in? Do you think we should do this? So it's nice having a pediatric family with that. But for
Right.
the most part, to answer your question, I mean, usually the common childhood illnesses, fevers, colds, being a pediatrician, you see that every day. So it doesn't really stress you out when it's your own kids.
Yeah, I think as a non-medical expert, right, as a father myself and his mothers, and I talk to other dads and whatnot, it feels like we're in an age where we could scare the crap out of ourselves because we're going on the web and we're like WebMD and like, holy cow, my kid has XYZ, like he has
Right.
the Black Plague, right? Like,
Right.
how often do you run into that where parents are just coming in like the kid has like a mild cold and a cough and they're like, I think this is
Right. No, well, I
influenza,
see
bird
that. I
flu.
see that 5 or 6 times a day. The internet is dangerous, and a lot of parents know right away. They say, "Well, I know I should have done this, but I Googled, this disease or whatever. I Googled these symptoms." But and it really is. It really is something we see a lot of, and it's part of the challenge of being a pediatrician that you have to kind of bring them back down and say, that's unlikely, and it's always something we'll keep in the back of our head, but common is common, and we don't go for those zebras right away.
Right. It almost feels like you have to, yeah, well, right. The zebra is a good analogy, but it almost feels to me like you probably have to like debate with them sometimes too. They're like, well, I read this on this forum or my girlfriend told me about this in this group chat. Like, it seems like there'd probably be times we actually have to debate them like, well, I actually went to medical school and I've been
Yeah.
doing this for nearly 20 years. So
My
you probably seen some
partner,
Tylenol.
my partner has a coffee mug that says, uh, I did not get my medical degree on Google or something like that.
Right.
But yeah, it's true. And the biggest thing we see now is with vaccines, and we get a lot of, not as much as you would think, but we do get, that's the biggest thing. I've been looking at the internet all day, and, I read about this vaccine, and, that's where we try to say, listen, that's when I really want to step in and try to give the actual, the data, the medical data, and you say, you got to trust me. You hired me as your pediatrician. I've been a doctor for 10 years. I've studied this for 16 years. So, you got to trust me over the internet.
Yeah, 100%. And so that kind of leads in pretty well into my next question, and that is choosing a pediatrician. Because one thing that I've found in just working with different doctors, talking with different doctors, is they all have different kinds of mentalities or opinions, different interpretations of data. What are some ways that fathers and parents can find a pediatrician who they trust, who lines up with them? What are some questions to ask?
Yeah, great. So number one, especially if you're having a new baby, you're going to be in that office a lot, and you probably should schedule an appointment to meet with them before the baby's born, and meet with a few different ones. Even if you like one, meet with a couple different ones. You want to look at where how the office is. Are you going to be comfortable going there that often? Because in the first year, so basically you're going to go 2 days after the baby's born. You're going to go a week after the baby's born. You're going to go 2 weeks. You're going to go 1 month, 2 month, 4 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and then every 3 months until they're two. So
Right.
it's going to be a place where you got to feel comfortable. Obviously, sitting down and talk with the pediatrician, kind of making sure you guys line up. So questions I commonly get, first and foremost, about vaccinations. So if you have a problem with vaccines, most offices these days won't take patients who don't do vaccines. So that's one of the things. Just having a simple conversation and seeing if you mesh well with the conversation. Then office policies, wait times, after hours phone calls, those kind of things are what the most common questions we get. And then I always get good questions about if I prescribe a lot of antibiotics, or my view on breastfeeding. So obviously, no, we only use antibiotics when it's necessary. You don't want a pediatrician who's going to jump to antibiotics right away. We want to encourage breastfeeding as much as we can, and anything that's important to you before basically is what you should look in and go straight up and ask the doctor before you have your baby.
Yeah, so find someone, screen a couple different, at least ask questions, make sure that their priorities and views are in line with your own. Because,
Exactly.
if you're really gung ho on, hey, I need to be a breastfeeder, and the person you're talking to is saying, hey, you should supplement, that's probably
Exactly.
not. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
How often do you actually get dads coming into the pediatric office with their kids, with their moms, or is it mainly all moms, or how
So
many dads get
for the
involved?
most part, it's moms. What I usually see, the pattern I usually see is the dads come, the first few visits, especially with a new baby, which is great. But not to stereotype, but most go back to work, and the mom is with the baby. So after a few visits, we only see the dad every couple of years, to be honest. But I do have a lot of dads who are very active, and I even have some dads who are the only ones who bring the kid in. But I
Sure.
think it depends on the home situation. Um, or when the kid's very sick. Like today, I had a patient. I've never met the dad, but the kid was pretty sick, and the dad came with the mom. So I mean, in the world, moms, dads work, so it's hard, and usually one will just come. But in the beginning, we do see a lot of dads, um, and then then as the patient gets older, the dad kind of gets used to going and knows the doctor, and I think they have more trust and they don't come.
So I've actually got a kind of a funny story that you may or may not be aware of, but your father was actually my pediatrician back, decades
Oh
ago,
wow.
right?
So okay.
Yeah,
I don't think I knew that.
yeah. And my dad didn't typically come to visit. Like you said, he kind of did the typical thing: come to the first couple, and then he was off to work. He's building business, et cetera, et
Right.
cetera. So for whatever reason, one day it was time for me to get a shot, and I was not having it. Didn't want the shot. It was just wasn't happening. Right. I don't think many kids enjoy getting shots, and I definitely one of them. So I ended up like hiding and kind of like getting into this little crevice underneath the desk, and they could not get me out. And so that was a situation where dad had to get called in. They had to call in the big guns to
Yeah,
get
so
little
actually
Mark out of.
that's true. I do get that. I forgot about that. I do get, oh, you're getting shots next time. I'm bringing his dad. His dad's coming with him, and I will get that occasional, maybe once a week or so, where the dad brings him just for the shot. Yep. Yeah.
That's kind of what dads are there for, to be like, all right, son, daughter, we're going to get through this together. Buckle up. We're going to make it through it. I think that's an
But
important.
I'll get it the other way too. The dad brings the kid in. They need blood work. Oh, I can't be here for that. I need mom. So it goes both ways. But yeah, usually it's the dad who comes with the shots, right?
For sure. For sure. Um, so, again, we're talking a little bit about WebMD and issues that parents might freak out about. What are some top things that you've seen parents really be concerned about that are really pretty normal, not something they really need to freak out of? And I also want to preface this by saying, hey, if you're unsure, it's always a good idea to see your doctor. But
Right.
what are some of the
Exactly.
reasons?
Yeah.
What are some of the
That's
things?
the main thing I want to say. To me, there's no silly visit. That's why we're here. You're not supposed to know what the patient's not supposed to know everything. Parents aren't supposed to know everything. And if anything you're worried about, bring them in. That's why we're here. And we tell the nurses that we're answering the phones that even if they think it's something that doesn't need to be seen, if the parent wants to be seen, then we want to reassure them. So to me, I would say fever. Fever is a normal process when you're sick. For the most part, kids don't need to be seen the first day of a fever. Obviously there's a lot of exceptions to that, but a healthy kid who has a fever for a day, this is normal. Fever is good. Fever is the body doing its job to fight whatever most likely virus is going on. Especially in kids, most common cause of fever in kids is a virus. So it is a general statement in a kid with just a fever and nothing else. There's no reason to panic. I think there was studies back in the old days where they had kids with fever, and half of them got Motrin or Tylenol, and the other half didn't. And the side that didn't get the Tylenol and Motrin seemed to improve quicker and less days of fever. So when I'm at home with my kids with fever, I try to let it go for a day or two. Again, depending on there's nothing else drastically wrong, and see what happens. Now, and I get a lot of the fever was really high, that's why I brought him. In kids, fever can get high, and 103, 104 is not that uncommon.
Wow.
Again, I'm prefacing saying that if you're that worried, we check them. That's why we're here. But for the most part, fever, you don't have to be rushed in. Fever is a normal process. 2 to 3 days usually go by, and the fever should resolve on its own. The other thing, and also colds, cold symptoms, cough, congestion, most commonly viruses. Sinus infections are rare in children. So most cough and congestion can run longer than you think, 4 to 6 days in the beginning, and can take up to 2 to 3 weeks sometimes to resolve. So
Wow.
I get a lot of visits of, it's been going on for 7 days now, they need antibiotics. Well, no, that's not necessarily true. Kids are pretty resilient, and most of the time they can fight viruses on their own. So I'd say that's one of the things that people freak out about. And even today, I had a father that came in with the wife, and I hadn't met him before because the kid's fever was high, and he said something has to be wrong. And again, a great worry, but everything checked out okay in this kid, and we watch him. So.
Good deal. So speaking of fevers and colds, I don't know if this is an urban myth. My wife always says this, and I'm like, I don't know that that's actually true. Does being cold make you sick? Like sometimes she's like, oh, we got to put 3 or 4 layers on him so he doesn't get too cold. Is that what makes kids sick?
No, I don't think so. No, it's more of an urban myth. viruses are passed through most likely droplet secretions, cough, congestion, touching something, putting something in your mouth. Now, is there a possibility that having being cold and not, your body not being at its optimal temperature, you're able to get a virus more quickly? It's possible, but for the most part, you have to have a contact from a respiratory secretion or touching something to get
Some
it.
sort of some sort
Yeah,
of
so you
virus, but
you shouldn't get a cold from being in the rain, and I still get that all the time. They were in
right.
the rain yesterday, and then they got a cold. No, that's not true.
Got it. Got it. So I can't wait to show this back to my wife so I
Uh,
can lay it down on her. What is something that parents just don't worry about, but probably should be more concerned about?
that's a great question. Again, there's probably a lot of things I can go on and on about. The most important thing I say is nutrition. I mean, this day and age with childhood obesity, I see I see a lot of issues with McDonald's and fast food and kind of junk food, and some parents don't know that that's not okay.
Mm.
And, there's some economic issues to that. I think that's another story. But juices. So a lot of children drink juice. Children really shouldn't be drinking juice. In the old days, everybody drank juice, but now we know it's mainly sugar and shouldn't be drinking our fruits. We should be eating our fruits. So basically, drinking juice is taking a high load of sugar. And I tell my patients, might as well give them Skittles or Starburst,
Wow.
not to mention what it's doing to your teeth. So really, children should just be drinking water. And there's actually recommendations from the American Academy of Pediatrics that children 1 through 4 should have no more than 4 ounces of juice per day if they are going to have juice. But I think that's one of the big things that parents come in proud saying, "I'm giving him juice. He's drinking juice every day." And I say, they really shouldn't be doing that. And nutrition. So you'd be surprised at how many times I'm coaching with nutrition, and it seems like most new parents would want to do what's best for their children, and some just don't know better. But fruits, vegetables, and kids are getting chicken nuggets and pizza, and again, as a dad, I know the struggle, and I have to fall and give my kids that once in a while too. But for the most part, if the parents will say to me, "He will eat nothing but that," well, who's feeding him that? You gotta be the one to offer him the good foods.
Kids are very good at pushing boundaries, so
Yeah.
I can empathize with that. The other problem is that you go out to these restaurants and you go look at the kids menu. It's always crap.
Right.
There's never anything on there that I would actually eat, right?
Everyone it's grilled cheese and chicken fingers and pizza, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then it comes out and it looks like it was just like frozen for weeks and they just microwaved it. And I'm like, I wouldn't eat that. And now I'm gonna serve it to my kid. It's
Right. I
crazy.
try. Yeah, I try out at restaurants to order from the adult menu when I can, or appetizers that seem more healthy for the kids. But
Yeah.
again, I preach these things, but I'm also a dad, and I know the struggle, and I get the chicken nuggets once in a while too.
Yeah. Well, like I try to never expose my daughter to a tablet or screen at the table, but every once in a while it's like my wife and I have to talk for 5 minutes and it's like we just gotta kind of like calm her down.
But
What about watering down juice? Do you think that's an effective tool?
I don't. Listen, if your kid, if the child is kind of addicted to juice, and that's one of the ways to combat it, sure. But ideally, never to have that taste for it. So we want them to like water. So once you start watering down juice, they're gonna like the taste of juice in the water. So I always try to say just water
Cut it
all
up.
the way, milk once or twice a day if needed. But a toddler should only have water and milk. Yeah, I want to bring the tablet thing because that's a great point. I didn't even think of that, but when I was thinking about the show, I do have parents that come and say that the tablet, I'm so proud my kid can do this and this on the phone. My kid can do this on the tablet. I preach that we really want to minimize the exposure to these TV, tablets, any screen time under the age of 3. Basically the I look at the brain like a muscle, and when they're watching these tablets, these screen times, even if it's an educational show, um, it's strengthening that action portion of the brain, And, this may be one of the things that's causing ADHD in the future when the kid's looking in real life and it's not as fast, it's not as action filled as
Mm.
this tablet is. So when they get bored easier, and they're looking around like, why isn't this moving? Same thing as video games, but so the American Academy of Pediatrics says screen time should be no screen time under 3 years of age. So that's something to think about. And again, I have 3 kids. My first kid, we did the best we could. There's times when you're going to need them to sit in front of the TV while you take a shower or whatnot. By the time we got to the third kid, the first kid has the electronics, so it's inevitable that it's hard to fight it off. But I try to preach what's best to the parents. Not always, not always working out in my house though.
Yeah, well, like you got to be practical about it. And one of the things that I've found and I'm really passionate about is kind of like saying, okay, these are the best practices. And I'm going to do my best to get there. But like you said, no one's perfect. Sometimes you've got to take a break, or
Correct.
you've got to maybe break one of your rules. It's just being conscious about this implication. Like, for example, in the juice thing, like we do typically give our daughter like half water, half juice. And now just talking about this, I realized that, right, like the juice is it's pure sugar. You're not getting the fibers out of the fruit. So that's something to think about, trying to wean her off that. Although we've already trained her that, a little bit of juice is fine.
She's expecting that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What about medicine in general? Where do you see medicine going in the future? Like you said, it's come a long way since your dad was practicing and his father was practicing. Where do you see things going?
That's a great question. I wish I knew that answer for sure, but we see a lot of with telemedicine now. That's a big topic, and most companies are starting to look into that. Here we are in my company as well. We thought that would never happen, but it's something that's in the process. And a lot of the larger groups are doing that, and basically kind of sitting on like you're on a podcast, looking at looking at the doctor, and they have now equipment where you can buy something and attach it to your phone, and you can look in the ear at any time of night, and the doctor can see it live right there. The old school doctors, and I'm kind of on the border of that. I guess now for 10 years, even though I don't feel old school, but that part of you wants to say that's not good medicine, but I think it's where we're at, and I think it's what parents expect. I think it's more of changing with society, and society wants doctor right now. They don't want to wait. They want their kids seen right this minute. The fever just started. They want them seen. So that's also where we see the secondary provider, like nurse practitioners and physician assistants, who are great tools. And that there's being more and more of them hired to meet that need of the quick demand from the patients.
Yeah, the remote visits and technology, that seems like the big thing, because you could it's all about access right now, right? Getting access to people as quickly as possible, which is probably a blessing and a curse. It means that you can see more people more quickly, but the curse is you're going to be getting called at 1:00 at night to say, hey, what's going on in little Johnny's ear, right? And it's going to be hard to ever. That's one of the challenges I have, I think, when it comes to technologies. It's like I can never actually break away to focus on what's in front of me, because I'm always being pulled and notified of these different things that are happening.
Well, and so to see little Johnny's here at 1:00 in the morning, it may not be your physician. It's going to be another provider for the most part, because that's the other way of doing it now, is that it's kind of shift work. So you're on call from this to this, you're on call from this to this, and the continuity of care may be getting lost. That's concerned with the urgent care centers. Again, they serve a great need, but we have patient go to urgent care center and we're not really sure that what was it done properly? Was it really this? And then we got to follow them up. And, so it's a complication, but it's the way life is now in medicine. And for the most part, it's fulfilling the patient's needs.
For the most part, the problem is I think we rely more on technology. We're relying less on the knowledge and the understanding of the individual and the context of the situation as well.
Exactly.
That's That's one of the big problems with urgent care. They're like, it's kind of like back when you were in high school and you scrape, you got hurt or whatever, and you go to the nurse like, just put some ice on it, you'll be fine.
Right.
Right. There was
Right.
no like,
There's nothing like having your own doctor that knows you and knows the family. That's the ideal situation from the past, but I just don't know if that's fully sustainable anymore. And everybody's trying to work around it and find that solution.
Absolutely. Well, doctor, it's been a pleasure. I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show with me. I know it's been a long, crazy day. You're a doctor after all, so you stay really busy, but I really appreciate you taking a few minutes. I mean, I'll be honest, just in this past half hour, I feel like I've learned a lot.
Oh, great.
Like I've learned a lot. So if I've learned a lot, I could tell you that there's going to be thousands and thousands of men out there, fathers, parents, that I think are going to get a lot of value. So I really appreciate you taking a minute. And I think some of these topics, like we just kind of scraped the surface on. So
right.
I'd love to chat in more detail in the future. We'll see how things go.
Yeah, I would love to do that. This is a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Dr. Cadiz, is my pleasure, and really looking forward to our next visit. In the meantime, have an awesome day, brother.
All right. Thank you. You too.